Okay, this morning we're going to go over the projects section of OASIS. We've broken this into multiple parts. We will be going through some of the beginning areas of projects and how to find and what some of the fields mean and are used for. Inside of OASIS, some of the basics that we can have is projects can be searched for either from the project section or from the home screen. And depending on what your database is set to, you can create new projects or quotes or simple projects from either the quote section or the project section. There are 3 different types of quotes inside of OASIS. There's the daily quote, the simple project, and the full project. Today, we are going to be going over the full projects. In the project section, if you want to search for any type of project, on the right-hand side, if you see this search section, you're able to do that. If you are not able to see it, it means that you have turned it off. You can click this binocular set up in the top right-hand corner, and it will hide or unhide the search function. On this list, or on this screen here, is the default search parameters. You can search by quotes that are created on a specific day by doing the day views. This does look at the bid date for that quote. You can adjust any amount of days by typing into this day field, so you can go back a year or further as far as you want. Depending on what filter options you have selected here is going to choose what bids will be shown when you do your search. There are 2 different types of views you can do when searching for projects. You can search for the bids or just the overview of the project. By doing the show bid checkbox, you're going to get more information and you'll be able to see each of the bids that are inside of that project. If you do not have the show bids, all you're going to see is the header level information, which will be the project name and possibly the address, depending on if that was filled out. So if we do a quick search here, this is going to show the bids that are in our project or in our database. So I did for 180 days. And obviously in most of your databases, if you do 180 days, you'll have a lot more quotes than I have. By doing that same search, by taking the show bids off, I'm going to get a different set of results. It will show less because each of these may be part of the same project. And I have less information available. On either one of these views, you can go to File and Preferences and adjust which columns you see. If you need to see more information, without the show bids checked, there's a limited number of columns that you can see because, again, it's only header level information. The next searching feature is the project name. You can search for a project by the project name or any alias that has been created for that project. You can also search for a specific quote number. If you know the quote number, if you want to do that from this field, you must put in a hashtag, the $, and then when you type in the number, it will look for the quote number that associates with that number. If you need to search for something more specific, you can click the Find button, and it's going to open up a search window that gives you a lot more options, and you can specify exactly what you are looking for. On the Basic tab, it's broken down by the different fields that you're going to find on the General tab of the project. And when we get into the project, I'll explain what most of these fields are, but all of those fields that are filled out can be searched by. including specific date ranges, your project rank, order statuses, or any of the vertical markets that exist in your database. Each tab is broken down by specific subjects. So the basic is just going to be primarily the information on the general tab of the project. The money tab, this is where you can look at the active quote that is in your in that project by the header level information. So if you want to look for all quotes that are over $50,000, you can put a minimum sell or minimum earnings in there for a specific amount, and it will bring in the projects that meet that criteria. The internal tab, this is going to be for your salespeople, your quoters, your CSRs, any of the internal people that work in your agency, or if you want to separate by specific work groups, which would be territories in OASIS terms, if you have multiple territories set up in your database. Parties, this is going to be the external tab. So this is for the different companies, your customers, specifiers, distributors, and the like. You can see whether this has a submittal that's been attached to it. So you can find all jobs that have a submittal or ones that don't have a submittal. Look for specific specifiers, and this also includes the assigned to roles that was included on the internal as well, so you can get more specific as needed. You can look for any project that has a specific note attached to it, whether it's on the line level, on the project level, or the quote level. And I will show you each of those fields. You can look for any project that has a specific description for an attachment. So if you want to find one that has contractor counts added, and that's the way you add in either the notes or the description, you can look for projects that include that. And then search keys are something that are going to be database specific. These fields are not going to show up in yours. These are only in this database, but you can create your own search keys. So if there's something else you really want to be able to search by in the projects or any section in OASIS, you can create search keys that will then allow you to create your own reporting or search fields. Okay. That is how you would do the find for your projects. I'm going to go ahead and open up a brand new project at this time. I can do this by either clicking the home button or the building structure button, or doing file, new project. If your user has access to multiple work groups, it's going to ask you which work group you want to create it in. So we can just select which one we're creating it in. And it will create this project, taking you to this overview tab. When dealing with projects, there are three things that you'll be dealing with. There's the overview tab, the initial phase tab, and then each bid tab. The overview tab is the entire collection of the project. This is where you're going to give the project its name. This will follow through with this all the way through the rest of the transactions, and often will print on your quote reports, your quote customer copies, and orders as it moves forward. This will also show you a list of all phases that have been created and attached to this project. Inside of the project, you can put in the project name that it's going to go by. If you have other information that it might be searched by, that would be included in the alias. An alias is anything that you might search by it, but not necessarily something you want to print. So A good example is if you have a project that you're adding to your system that you found from, say, the Dodge list, and you put in the Dodge number that you have on there, that's what you have at that time. And then later you find out that that project is actually the Baxter Building. You can come in and update the project name to the Baxter Building, and it will ask you if you want to take the previous name that you had, which was the Dodge number, and add it to an alias. There are no limits to the number of aliases that you can have. So it just makes it easier to search by as needed. When you have a name added and you're ready to move over to the next phase, we're going to go to the initial phase. Inside of your phase, this is going to be separate reporting points inside of a project. While you are working in a project, you might have different reporting points that need to be kept up with, but that are part of the same project. One of the best examples I use by that are schools. You may have a library, a gymnasium, and a parking lot, all of which can have different customers, different bill of materials, different things that you would need to track, and can have different bid dates and different quotes that are all associated with it, but still part of that same project. Each of those would be a brand new phase that would give you a different reporting point. To make it easy, each of these phases can be labeled. So as you work your way through the project, if you have multiple phases, you can give this a name and it will help it designate either on the overview tab or across the top as your phases are shown. On this general tab, like I said, in the search function, this is all fields that you can search by, but also anything on this can be reported on as well. All of this information, as it gets filled out, will help make your reports better in the long run. There are some fields that will automatically calculate or automatically assign as the order or as the quote progresses. Upon creating it, the quoter is going to be assigned to whoever created the project if they are marked as a quoter. As the project gets won, it's going to designate which agency won this. By default, it's often going to be your agency or your company, but you can also keep track of your competition by putting in other companies that would be your competition. And as it progresses through there, this won by will allow you to say that the project was won by a different company but lost to yours. And you can keep track of that if that's something you wish to report on. Looking at these checkboxes, these are all things that you can search for. Generically, the specified project is going to be a project that your company is doing extra work on. We find that a lot of people will use that if they're the ones that have to do, say, the submittals or anything extra on it, or if it's something that your company has been designated as the specified agency to get this job, you can do that as well. The important part on any of these fields is however you use them as a company, you need to use them consistently. It is possible for these fields to mean different things to different people, but as a company, you need to decide what they mean to you. A good example would be this % specified field. If you have a quote that has 10 line items and your agency is specified on 8 out of those 10 lines, you can say that you are 80% specified, and that will be absolutely correct. But if we look at that same quote and 2 of those line items that you are not specified is worth $50,000 and the total of the 10 lines is worth $100,000, you could also put that you are specified 50%, and that would be correct as well. However, if one person in your company uses it one way and another person uses it a different way, your reports are not going to work out and they won't be accurate. Project rank, these are the default ranks in here. You may have different ones in your company. These are editable, but these allow you to color code projects that will show up on the calendar, on the home screen for the bid board, and also another field that you can search by. These give you the opportunity to quickly see different projects while looking at the calendar or bid board by highlighting them specific colors. Like the huge opportunity might be highlighted as red, and you know that you need to make sure that you do what you need to do to win that project for your agency. Whereas one that you may not be working on or one you're not as concerned about, you can mark it as white or clear, and then you won't have to worry about it. But it just gives you a way to visually see those different color codes. The vertical dropdown is used for project type. So if you wanted to track whether it's a educational job, an office building, waterworks, lodging, anything like that, this list is customizable, but these are just some of the default ones that we have added in here. You can select which ones they are, and it allows you to report on jobs based on what you have selected. This section down here, if you have user search tags, this goes back to what I said. These are only in this specific database, but you can add your own. If you do not have any in your database, then this section will not show up. If it's something that you are interested in, you can send in a quick message to our support team, and we'll show you how to set those up inside of your database. The specifier section, this is where you would add in any specifiers that are associated with this project. These are some of the default roles that are selected in here. Your company may look slightly different. There are ways to control which ones will show up here on default. But in looking in here, anytime you see words that are blue inside of Oasis, that means it is a button that is clickable. So on here, if I need to add in a different role other than the architect, engineer, or contractor, I can either add additional ones by clicking the add button at the bottom, or change this role by selecting it and then selecting a specific role that I need to do. This will allow me to search for specifiers of that specific role. When I click the ellipsis button next to it, it's going to bring me up all of the specifiers of that role by default. If I need to still look for something else, I can always click the show all button to try to find a different one that may not be in the role I'm thinking it was assigned for. When you bring in your specifier, if there is a sales account that is associated with that, it will bring in that sales account as well. So you'll know which user is designated in your system to call upon that specific specifier. And if the customers or specifiers have specific ranks set up in your database, it will automatically fill out this section here, which is the influences. So it gives us a weighted value. And if any weighted value is in there, it will automatically fill out your sales accounts section based on the sales users that are tied to those specifiers. Okay. Now, I'm going to go to a new bid. And on this bid, we're going to see specific columns. In these columns are some of the default ones that you will work with. You have your base quantity. This is going to be the quantity that's going to be for the overall portion of the project or for the bid. Your type, your manufacturer column, part, description, and note. This is where you're going to put in the manufacturers that are in your database that are going to be on this system. If you do not have a manufacturer in your database, this field will not let you add in empty type. It has to be one that has been created in your database. Now, when you type in a manufacturer that doesn't exist, it will just clear it out. It will not allow you to add that in. Okay. When you have a manufacturer in there that has price lists as well, you can begin typing in the part numbers and it will find a list to bring in those specific parts. Any description that's set in that price list and the prices that are associated will also be filled out with that part. It's important to note that the project or the part number will show up as different colors depending on what it is pulling from. If it shows up as green, that means it pulls from an active price list that is not expired. If it shows up as black, that means it is just a part that is not in a part list. So it was a manually entered part. If it shows up as blue, then that means it is a configured part. It will bring in the prices that are associated with that if it's done under the series editor. But the blue designates that it is a configured part. The other colors to look at would also be in the sell value. Green means that it is an active price. If it's black, it means it's a manually typed in price. It can also pull in from the system and recognize that the part is good, but the sell price may not be. You're going to always use some of the tools, so like tools, price lookup, or press the F3 key. This will take you to your price list and you can see why a price didn't come up. So looking at this orange here, if you hover over it, it's telling you why it is showing up as orange. The price is out of date. So for this specific part, it is expired on our price list. So it did not want to bring in that price. You can still tell it to bring it in by right-clicking and say use price or copy. And it will bring in the price that you wanted and put it into the line. When looking at your different columns as the description, notes, and your money columns come in, you might find that your descriptions or notes are longer than what you would be able to see without having to scroll or adjust your column widths every time. There is a special key you can push, which is the F2 key, which will open up a edit value screen. This works just for the description, note, and internal note column, which allows you to see all of the information that is in there and to continue editing as needed. So if you needed to add additional information, you can type into this field and it will add that to the description or note field as needed. And those extra notes have been saved. When looking at the money columns, base or book is a reference only price column. Generally, it's used as the MSRP or the street value that you would have for that specific part. OBase is the point at which Oasis will begin calculating overage. Your OBase commission is going to be the commission that is connected to that O-base rate. Cell formula is a cell column that allows you to adjust or multiply your values based on other columns that exist inside of Oasis. So if I wanted to increase this or do a markup, right now I can choose to type in a special amount, so like 10, and it will do a 10% markup off of the base column. It will adjust this and do a calculated commission rate based on the commission rate that was there by default plus the amount that's in the overage. There's also the math functions, which allows you to create your own formulas if you're not familiar with the terms that are the formulas that Oasis uses. You can click on the math functions tool or go to tools math functions and pull in which it will open up the math functions window. By default, it's going to do the selected rows, so just what rows you have selected. You can also select the ellipsis, which will allow you to select all of the rows by specific manufacturers. This is a good tool to use if you have certain manufacturers that you have a better overage contract with. So you can add more of the money to those ones rather than adding it to ones that you don't have as good of a contract with. Or you can adjust by all rows, and this will do it to all rows down the line. The use values from is going to tell where it wants to pull the value from. So it's going to default pull from base, but I can tell it to pull from O-base. So if I want to mark up and make sure that I'm above my overage price, I can do that. Where I want to put the value, so I can tell it to put it in cell, or I can even put it in a different level. You can have up to 3 additional levels of pricing that you can separate for customers. And you can allow for rounding to get rid of pennies or nickels, or round to the nearest dollar or $5. It's really up to you. I'll just do it to the nearest nickel. And then I can choose whatever multiplier I want to do. So if I want to mark up from O-base an extra 15%, I can tell that that's what I want to do. I'm going to check the box for the save macro. By having this box checked, it's going to go ahead and put the formula that it's using into the level 1 formula column. If I don't show that, it's going to leave this blank, but it's still going to put the value into level 1. So click apply. And now we can see the formula that it used to mark up and get to this price. Your overage percent, this is going to be the contractual value that the manufacturers have worked with you. So for this specific manufacturer, they've given us 90%. So anything that we sell that's over that O-base, we're going to get 90% of it. 10% will go to the manufacturer. This does pull from your manufacturer entry inside of Oasis, so it's something that can be set up, but it can be changed line by line if needed. These fields that are highlighted yellow, it's telling us that there's something that needs to be there. When you're working on a project, generally you want to chase away that yellow if you can. So this is showing that we have no price in here, so that's why it's blank, or that it's a $0 value. So anything that we're selling over this 1870, our agency, because of the way we have this set in Oasis, is getting $0 of that. So it's all going to the manufacturer at that point. If that was really the case, there's no point in selling it for more than what you would be selling it for. The other option that you might use this line for would be resell information. So you might have certain lines that have resell, or that you resell that have a cost associated with them. If they do have a cost, it's going to go ahead and fill out the cost that you have here, and it will check in this resale box. If you have a manufacturer that is not allowing resale, you cannot enter a cost, and this box is grayed out, preventing you from making changes. However, if the manufacturer is set to be resale okay, then it will allow you to add a cost to certain lines that you may be reselling specific products. Or some lines may be resale only, in which case it will always need a cost in order to move forward. This header level information will calculate based on the quantities that we have set on the lines. So if I go in and add a couple of quantities here, then it's going to go out and calculate based on the information that we have on our bill of material. And we will see this up in the top. Much like the phase information, you can have multiple bids. So this initial bid may be this us creating the project that we know of or the bill of material that we were given. But it's possible that things change down the line, and almost always happens. So as you're working your way through your bids, after you've sent this out or created, or you have your original bill of material that you don't want to change, you can do File, New, and then New Bid Like or New Bid. New Bid Like is going to take the bill of material that we have and copy that over to a new bid. You just do the new bid, it's going to do a new blank bid with none of the bill of material being copied. So when I do a new bid like, it's going to take the previous one and it's actually going to mark that as closed. By default in Oasis, you can only have one active bid per phase. All other bids will automatically be closed. If I do need to come back to this bid and reopen it to work on it, I can change this status to any active status, but then it will close this one. You can only have one active at a time. With the phases, how we could have renamed those, we can also rename the bids to make them easier for us to see as we're progressing through this project. So this allows us to make changes as needed. Maybe we need to change some of the series. Maybe we need to change some of the quantities. We can make those revisions and keep those changes without modifying what the original bid was done. Okay. Inside of the bill of material on the bid tab, we can go to the customers. This is where you're going to add in your direct customers and indirect customers. So if you are a rep, you'll be adding in distributors. If you're a contractor, or if you're a distributor, you'll be adding in contractors. By clicking add customer, it's going to go to your default role for whatever is your direct customer to allow you to add in any of the customers that you're going to be giving this bid to. If you have contacts for those customers and you know who they are, you can go ahead and add the contact that you'll be associated with. And you can add in multiple at one time without having to go in and add them all individually. When you have the different customers on here added in, you can choose what's price level they're going to be getting. By default, it's going to all be the same. So when I pull these in here, it will all be sell. It is possible to set them up to all be level 1 by default. There are different things in there. But the primary thing to make note of is that I can come in here and choose that this specific distributor is going to get a different price level than the other 3. It could be that I have this price level marked down and I like them better, or it could be that it's marked up because I don't like them as much. Or it could be that you know that they have to add in a different processing fee because of different territory scenarios. But by selecting that different level, when I go to print this, On the list of the different customers, we're going to see what cell level I have them set to and what price they're selected to get. Because of the one that I added in the contact, I can go ahead and select this here, and it will pre-fill out the email address if I was going to email out of Oasis. On this print screen here, this is because these links are all blue, I can actually click in here and see this information and make changes to it as needed. So if I realize that last stop lighting also needs to be the level 1, I can click in the blue link and it's going to bring up the same window, and then I can change what price level they would be getting as well. With the way Oasis is set up, if I'm going to do a send message and I'm sending this quote out to multiple distributors or contractors or different customers as I go, with the send message and multiple ones selected here, when I get into the actual print, it's going to create separate emails. They are not going to be BCC'd or CC'd. They are completely separate emails. So you're not going to accidentally send Warren Zevon's quote to North Hills. It will be separated correctly. On the next option, this is where you're going to choose what information you actually want to send. Do you want to give unit pricing? Do you want to hide any information, like you don't want to give the quantities or you don't want to give descriptions? You can choose what's actually going to show on the print by selecting these print options here. These are user, it will remember what your user used last. This bottom one is one that we get asked for often, or asked about often. The draft only is primarily to show on a PDF print or on a print preview. With the draft only checked, it's always going to show when you print a PDF or a print preview. When you uncheck it for the preview or the PDF, it will no longer have the little draft only watermark. However, on the send message and send message only, whether I have this box checked or not, in the preview for the send message, it's still going to have the draft watermark, which we'll see in just a second. So it has this draft down at the end and then the draft only watermark. This is only in the preview. If I were to edit either of the inside of this PDF or actually send the PDF, the draft only does not actually show. Now, on this left-hand side in the send message screen, we have 4 separate emails that are going to the different distributors that we had selected. In this top section right here, this is where you would put in the body of the email. So if you have something that you would send out to them, you would type it here, for your consideration, please, look at this value, see if you agree. Or if you have other specific information that you use common, you can create templates that you can use to pre-fill out information without you having to type it in every time. These templates are found all throughout Oasis. It's this clipboard icon that we see here, and you can see it up in the top right-hand corner of the main screen. They're all throughout Oasis, so you can create different templates for information you might be adding. When I click this clipboard option, it's going to show me the information that's in here and allow me to create a label to call this, and I can save this information so it can be reused in the future. You do have the option to create it just for your user, or if it's something that's going to be used in your database, you can uncheck this box and then it will be available for everyone that's in your database who would log in. Then you just click the save button and it will save that into this list that you can use as needed. The manufacturer tab is going to keep track of the totals going on with the manufacturers. When you have a line that is highlighted green, that means that that specific line, or at least part of it, has been marked as resell. So it's going to separate the resell lines from the commissioned lines. And then based on the manufacturer setup, it will tell you whether it's freight allowed, what kind of calculation it has. So this specific order doesn't meet the minimum, whereas these ones, because they have more of a quantity, it does make freight allowed. So it's going to tell you that as a visual before you get to the order. You can also adjust any of the territory splits that might be associated with this. So if you are creating a quote that is for an out of territory, or somebody else created one and you're just putting it into your system, you can click the split button, and it's going to be based on the default for the manufacturer setup, but you can choose what amount you want to get for your company. Local is your agency, other agency, or you may have other ones actually added in there you can specify. But you can specify that this is going to just other agency. So when it goes to split it out, you're getting some of the credit because it's in your territory, but some other agent is the one that actually did the order. That will calculate and then break out some of your earnings as well based on those percentages. Inside of Oasis, there are many note places that you can place in notes. You can type in a note on the actual column. When you do an internal note, it is going to highlight the part number as yellow, and it's going to bring that line to your attention. When looking at a part number that has that highlight, if you don't see the internal note column, you want to see it. If you hover your mouse over, it will tell you what the reason that that line is highlighted, whatever color it is. In that case, it's telling you that it's highlighted yellow with the internal note of this is an internal note. There are also bid specific notes rather than line specific notes. Clicking on the notes tab, the remarks in this line is going to show above the bill of material on the print. The notes is going to show below the bill of material. Then there's also the external note. This is what's actually going to print. And then if you have just internal specific notes, these will not print on any of the copies, but it will allow you to add notes as needed. When you have internal notes added to here, the notes column is going to highlight yellow. So when people come in, they will know that there's something added here that might be being brought to their attention. You can add in customer specific notes by selecting on one of the distributors that you have added. And then the last place you can add notes, get one of these customers. So there's customer specific notes. And then the last place to add notes is back on the overview tab. There's the project notes. These are also internal notes, but these will be associated with all of your phases and bids while you have these notes here. So that is project basics. I'm going to open up the last little bit of time that we have remaining for some questions.
Ryan, we did have one question that came into the chat from Julia. She asked, when you are assigned a vertical market, will it carry over to the PO when created and print on the manufacturer/rep copy?
All that information is tied together. So right now, I do not believe there is a vertical market field on the actual PO, but it is something that can be searched by in the order section because it is tied to the project. If the order is created from this project and you have selected a vertical market, then yes, you can report on it. It's just not going to show on the actual manufacturer print.
Tammy asked, where do I enter other companies for one buy?
Okay. So that does require admin access, but on the main screen of Oasis, if you have that access, you can go to File, and then Configuration under the Project section. And there's many tabs in here, but the one that you're looking for is Competition. And in this competition, you can add in other agencies or anybody else that you would want to include in the one buy field.
And then Angela asked, when is the next session and what is it going to be going into? What is it going to cover? I can answer this one. We have not picked a date for the next session, excuse me. It'll be in sometime in March, and this project's webinar is actually a 3-part webinar. The first part today was going over the basics of web projects, and then the next session in March will be going a little bit more in depth. Someone asked, how can we uncheck the active button on multi-quote, mass close quotes?
Okay. Generally, the active button isn't about closing. What that's doing is the active button prevents changes to the quote. Really, what you would want to do to set quotes to closed is based on the quote statuses. So there's not really a way to bulk close in along those ways. However, if you do searches inside of the project, so we'll bring up a list of here, and you can select a few, either using the control key or the shift key to select multiple ones. You can go to File. Sorry, I was thinking of orders. Yeah, there's not a way to bulk change the statuses of quotes. It would be on an individual process. If you're having issues with specific quotes that you're needing to clear off for either reporting purposes or just kind of help clean up, it's probably something that our support team can assist with. If you'll give them a call, one of us will be able to help walk you through kind of going through the process of cleaning up your quotes.
Someone asked or said, this is recorded so we can assume we can access it again. Yes, if you registered for this webinar, you will get an email when the video is ready with the YouTube link. It'll also go out in March's newsletter if you're subscribed for that. And then there'll also be a place to access it in our help documents in the video knowledge base. So there's a few different ways you can access it, but yes, you'll still have access to this.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions on what we've covered today?
Getting lots of thank yous, but thank you for joining today. And we appreciate you taking time out of your day to learn a little bit more about the project section. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you next month.
Well, thank you for joining.